Now, if you've got a mortgage, then today's news out of the Bank of England doesn't make pretty reading. The bank's monetary policy committee has raised the base interest rate by 0.25% to 5.25%. Now, this is the 14th time in a row the cost of borrowing has gone up, and it didn't come as a surprise to the people in the know. According to some analysts, interest rates could go up even further before they come down. Well, given that this will end up costing many people a lot more, why has the Bank of England decided to increase the cost of borrowing? Well, I'm joined now by our man in the know, Dr. Steve Nolan, who's a lecturer in economics at Liverpool John Moores University's Business School. A very good afternoon to you, Steve.
Hi, Sean. How you doing?
Nearly had you read it out before, Steve. I'm sorry about that.
It would have been a first for me.
This will inevitably mean people who've got a mortgage will pay more. So why has the Bank of England done it, Steve?
Well, just as with everything the Bank of England does, it's because they're concerned about inflation and bringing it down. So we've seen it fall. Last month, it went down from 8.7% to 7.9%. That was more than was expected. So it was kind of good news. But there's still some concern from the Bank of England. Specifically, they'd say around kind of services. And they see the price of services rising or remaining high for longer. And they're concerned about that because they think that's to do with, to a certain extent, wages. So what they're trying to do is control inflation and bring down wages by kind of taking some money out of the economy, to reduce the amount of activity in the economy, stop people spending, stop businesses investing, that kind of thing.
I mean, on average then, how much more does a 0.25% rise in interest rates cost mortgage holders?
So, I mean, there's going to be various different impacts for lots of different people. But anyone that's, say, on a tracker mortgage, where basically their interest rate matches the bank's interest rate, if they, say, had about £150,000 left on their mortgage and 20 years to pay, they'd see their payments go up by £25 a month. It's not nothing. It doesn't seem like a lot, but then if you think about it, as you said at the top, this is the 14th rise in a row. So someone paying that have gone from paying about £750 a month to over £1,000. So that's a big leap in monthly outcome goings. But not that many people have tracker mortgages. There's a lot more people on fixed term mortgages, and actually, a lot of the pain has not been felt by some people. They estimate there's about 4 million households that are still on fixed term deals that will be coming off them and coming from quite low levels, around about 1-2%, up to like 4 or 5%, and that's going to be a shock for their household finances going forward.
I was going to say, will people on fixed term mortgages be rubbing their hands in this situation, or are they just delaying the inevitable?
Yeah, they're not rubbing their hands. They're whilst some of the deals available have gone down, we're not looking at kind of things like about 6% and stuff. We're still in a new world where those kind of long-term fixed rates at around 1-2%, that world is over now. So what we pay for borrowing has just essentially increased.
So what impact will this have on the wider community, Steve?
So in terms of the economy, this rise in itself of 0.25% won't have a dramatic impact, really. What it's more about now, I'd say, is the bank signalling its seriousness about inflation. What the bank, in many respects, is worried about is expectation, people's belief that inflation is going to stick around. If you think that prices are going to continue to rise by, say, 7% a year, when it comes to negotiating your wages or thinking about setting your prices, you're going to be expecting to have prices that way. So what the bank's really worried about is if that gets embedded in, and then that's really hard to shift. So a lot of what's happening here is not actually essentially about the economy. It's almost a psychological thing. It's signaling that the Bank of England takes this seriously. Now, there's some debate within economics whether that is the right move and whether actually continuing to raise interest rates is the wrong move to do.
I mean, the government's got a 2% inflation target. We all know it's been a lot higher than that recently, as you say. But in layperson's terms, what effect will raising interest rates have on inflation then?
So there's kind of almost like different kinds of inflation to a certain extent. A lot of this came about because of two big shocks, the COVID and the war in Ukraine. Now, both of them are essentially not impacted by interest rates that we do. A lot of the first impact of them has gone out now because it's been over a year. What the Bank of England now is worried about what they call second round effects, the effect of inflation on wages, on prices. Now there, because we've got what's called quite a tight labour market, we have kind of more vacancies than we have people that can do the jobs. That tends to allow people to bargain up their wages. What they hope to do here is basically take some of that what we call heat out the economy so that there's not as many vacancies. And so that will put some downward pressure on wages, which feeds into prices, which should put downward pressure on prices.
Is there a danger here, Steve, that the Bank of England may have gone too far and it'll damage the economy?
Yeah, that's always a risk because when the Bank of England pulls this lever of the inflation rate, it doesn't work straight away. It can take up to a year and a half. And so some of the kind of quite valid criticism at the moment is in continuing to raise these rates, we're kind of not seeing what's happened from quite a lot of rates in the past year. We're not pausing to see what's happened to the economy there. So there is a risk that they've gone too far, definitely.
I mean, crystal ball time now, Steve. You know, what everyone who's got a mortgage will want to know is whether the interest rate is going to come down, and if it is, when?
So I think the short answer would be not anytime soon. Some of the signalling that the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, was doing today was basically signifying that whilst rates might not increase much more, they're probably going to stay around this level for quite some time, maybe into 2024, even 25, to really do what they believe will get inflation under control. So not much great news for you, unfortunately.
Steve, thanks for joining us today. And just a quick look at the weather before you go, Steve.
I think it's going to be great.
Brilliant. Good news at last, Steve. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, John.
Dr. Steve Nolan, a lecturer in economics at Liverpool John Moores University Business School, talking to us today.